All right, the title of today's message, you can see many different like different kind of punctuation marks there. But Jesus is born, and there's a question mark, exclamation mark, comma, period. There's many different reactions. So we're gonna look at the reactions to the birth of Jesus, and there's many. Um, we'll look at Luke chapter 2, verse 7, verse 15 through 20, Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 through 4, and 9 through 12. Let's begin. Matthew chapter 1, verse 18 says, Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. And there's so many different stories about these wise men, and we're going to get there. So we'll take it one step at a time here. All right, Luke chapter 2, verse 1, and then we're going to also do verse 4 and 5, and we're going to go to Micah. So, verse 1. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. In verse 4, and Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem. Lots of different things. It's like telling someone their address. That's why there's so many different details here, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. Lots of different information there, and this is actually a direct prophecy. So Micah chapter 5, verse 2, but you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel. So this is a king whose coming forth is from ancient days. So we know that this king is from an ancient lineage, and we have studied this before, so we know that this is in the lineage of Abraham, and it's going all the way down. Matthew makes a big point over here when we want to study the genealogy, that Jesus is the rightful legal and also biological king, and the Messiah. So there's a clear lineage there. So let's go on. So Caesar Augustus, he's actually a very famous person. There is several different documents that's written about him. You probably recognize his name. One of the places where you're gonna be hearing him is there was a great author and playwright, Shakespeare. So they're gonna be he's gonna be using his name, but it's actually different. You remember his name was actually Octavius. We're gonna get there here. So Luke chapter 2, verse 1. Caesar Augustus ordered a census of the Roman world. He wanted to, find out how many people was there, and several different reasons why. One is for taxes, to make sure that he's getting enough money, and for the Roman world. And the Roman world, it was huge, expanding, and they were very what's the word? Very calculating, a very advanced world, even to the standard. Now, Caesar Augustus, he was the first emperor of Rome. He lived from 63 BC to 14 AD. So he did live a long time. He ruled in Rome when Jesus was born. So that's an important point, when he was born. And, obviously it's not just when he was a baby there. And I'm getting this information from the Lexham Bible Dictionary. So here's what happened. It's really interesting how his name came about. But his real name was Gaius Octavius, a very Roman name there, But he was adopted by his uncle. Now, here it is, Julius Caesar. We have heard that name many times. And that's a very famous name, especially you hear that, um, in Shakespeare, and he even wrote a play titled Julius Caesar. So he was adopted by his uncle Julius Caesar, since his father died when he was young. So he legally obtained the last name Caesar. So Julius Caesar was murdered when Gaius was 19. We're going to find out that led to Gaius actually being one of the rulers now. So here it is: Roman world was ruled by Gaius in the west and Antony in the east. So interesting. Shakespeare also wrote a play about Mark Antony and Cleopatra. So 31 BC, Gaius became the ruler of the entire Roman world. It was massive. There was an argument, there was a conflict between Gaius, and the opposing side was Mark Antony and Cleopatra. So they went to war, and then obviously Gaius actually won this battle. So defeating Mark Antony and Cleopatra in the Battle of Actium. Um, the battle ended. It was unfortunate for Mark Antony and Cleopatra there, but then when they knew that Gaius was there with his massive army, they knew they're gonna be defeated. They actually committed suicide. So that's actually and it's recorded, all history, in Shakespeare, but many other writings about this. So isn't it interesting that you know when we read the Bible here, sometimes we look at this Bible as more of a legend, more of a fictional book. That is absolutely not true. This is a historical book. It is, this is a viable book of a historical book, and people that actually have taken this book very seriously, literally. There's some things that's very literal in this. In this book, and especially right here when it comes to like the Gospels, we should be taking those stories, not as fictitious stories, but these are literal stories that actually happen with actual people, such as Caesar Augustus. There, so 27 A.D. He gave the power to the Senate and to the people. So like if you look at the U.S. here, is that we the people. So it is a government run by the people for the people. At least that's what it's supposed to be, and that's kind of like what he was trying to achieve. It's a traditional Republican government. So so the Senate they were so happy about this. So they gave the title Augustus. And in Latin, it means to increase. It means to be revered, to be, I mean, really to be worshipped. So he became Caesar Augustus, and that this thing that's going to be happening, where now they're getting to the point where so they're worshiping these individuals that are emperor. That does happen. And in fact, when you look at the early church, um, early fathers, one of the main things that they were actually dealing with the Roman government was that they were actually dealing with a situation that the Roman government wanted the Christians and everyone to really acknowledge that they had to worship the emperor. It's interesting is that they themselves, yeah, I mean, all they're looking for is just a little compromise, but they found the Christians out of all the groups out there, they would not compromise because they said there's only one God. We will not do that. Very surprising. So Roman government did not like that. They didn't like the challenge, and of course, them with the other kind of leaders and whatnot, their persecution happened, and it was major. We'll talk about that next time, but then let's go over here. So that's how he became Caesar Augustus. He died at 14 AD at the age of 76. Once again, he lived a long time. And his stepson, not his son, but his stepson, Tiberius, became emperor. His family is really messed up. And, like your family might be going through a lot of different kind of things here. But, you know, um, I want us to understand that money, power, like prestige, even to the God status of being worshipped. It doesn't mean you're not you're going to have some major problems. And these individual and I wonder how he died. And like I have a feeling that he died a very lonely death. But Luke chapter 2 verse 1, he ordered a census and he fulfilled God's prophecy. Micah chapter 5 verse 2. And isn't it interesting that his life, focusing on himself, focusing on trying to be the greatest in the world, and then he didn't even recognize the greatest in the world that was born, which is Jesus. So here's what I think he would be saying. He's like, why does Jesus matter when I'm the greatest in the world? And maybe we have that same kind of mentality. Jesus does matter. And, like we have to fully understand that it doesn't matter how rich you are. You might be the richest person in the world. You might have the greatest influence in the world, all that kind of stuff. But Jesus is still greater than you. He's greater than all of us. And he's the one, not you, not me, not anybody, but only him. Only Jesus is the one that can truly give us salvation. Luke chapter 2, verse 6 to 7, and while they were there, the time came for her to give birth. That's Mary. And she gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. Matthew chapter 25, verse 40. And the king will answer them, truly, I say to you, as you did it to one of these least of these, my brothers, you did it to me. So, I find the story of the, like Joseph and Mary and going back to their hometown, very interesting. So let's go here. The innkeeper. So Luke chapter 2, verse 7, there's rooms in the inn were all full, but the innkeeper still made room. So there's really little known of this business owner. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if it was a business owner at all. This right here, the correct translation of this innkeeper or inn is actually guest room. So we will see this, this word innkeeper or inn in another story, but that's translated correctly, and that's in the story of the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan, you'll see that it's a different Greek word there. So I believe that this is a guest room, a family member. Joseph is going back to Bethlehem, and he has a ton of family over there. But it's full. So the business owner, he ran something like a hotel, like an Airbnb. But once again, if it was a guest room, probably not. And the Eastern culture, the Middle Eastern people, they're one of the things that kind of really identifies them is their hospitality. It's almost like it's part of their culture. So they're very hospitable people there. So interested in filling all the rooms. This innkeeper, but then once again guest room, and they're interested in making money here. But then there was no innkeepers. There were other innkeepers, so other family members in Bethlehem, but they all said no vacancy. So here's what I believe happened. So, like when you go back to these verses, it says that that Mary and Joseph, they were still betrothed. Here, let me go here. So, right here. So verse 5, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. So that's an important point. Why is that? Because they're not married yet. So a betrothed it's a marriage contract that's about to get married, but then they're not. So I believe here's what happened there. Joseph is wants to make sure that there's everything's very clear that he's going to adopt this child. this is not his child here, but he wants to also make sure that this entire situation, it's he knows is a very precious, very sacred moment where his wife Mary is going to have the Messiah, and he wants to make sure that nothing is getting in the way of that. So she has the baby, first child, and then after that they legally get everything done, marriage ceremony, all that kind of stuff here, and they're gonna have more babies. And we talked about that last time that they had four more boys, and it says sisters, so at least two girls, maybe even more. Back then they had lots of big families there. So but right now, the family members are hearing what's going on, and then they're saying, okay, so they're hearing the stories, and they're like, okay, I don't want, I don't want any part of the scandal. They're having a hard time believing it, and most people they don't believe that. Remember, even Mary and Joseph, um, they had a hard time even believing that. It was God that told them that this is going to happen, and they believed that. You know, but then these individuals, God's not speaking to them. They have to take the word from Joseph and Mary, and they can't accept that, and they don't want to be part of this kind of scandal. They're like, okay, you know what? Sorry, we're not going to make room for you. We don't want any part of the scandal there, so you're gonna have to find somebody else. Anyway, they finally found someone, and here's my my interpretation of what I believe happened here. So they finally go to a family member. They knock on the door, and I'm imagining the head of the household. I'm imagining the guy comes out. He knows her situation, and the door is not quite fully open, and he sees them, and he's talking with them, and Joseph is pleading, please, my wife is about to have this baby here. She could have the baby any minute now. And then he's about to close the door. His wife comes in, like the relative, and then he is looking at that. She's looking at her and going, you were very pregnant. We, you know, we don't have any room inside the house here, but we need to take care of you. You poor girl. I could see this interaction between the guy and the girl, and I mean, um, the mom over here, like in the house, and says, "Okay, here's what we're gonna be doing," and then he just, yeah, I could see her just kind of pushing the husband away, and says, "Okay, I got this. Don't worry. Any kind of scandal, whatever like that, I'll take care of that here. But we gotta take care of this girl. She's pregnant. She's about to have the baby here. I will take the fall for it. So don't worry. Let's go take care of that." Back then, in the house, it wasn't a big house, but then they would be sleeping on the top, and then on the bottom they would have. It's really reserved for smaller animals like the lamb and different kind of animals that'll be going over there. So it's interesting, it's very smelly and whatnot there. But then that area is not meant for people to be sleeping there. So she's thinking outside the box, had compassion and thought about sleeping outside the box, and then she goes, okay, well, this is what we're gonna do here for you. You go there. You could almost see her commanding voice and says, Joseph, Mary, you go there. Okay, we're gonna take care of you. We're gonna, and you could see this compassion, and was it? She had no option for a comfortable room, but that didn't matter. It's like they needed a place, so they made room in their barn. Why would the animals be coming in? It's because and these animals are small. They're babies and whatnot. There, so they didn't want any kind of wild animals to actually get them. So there's probably only a select few of them. Hopefully, you know. So that's why when you see the nativity scene, you do see like a lamb there, and whatnot, and I think that's actually pretty accurate. So Joseph and Mary were very thankful. They're like, thank God, and they had their baby. They had baby Jesus there. So this is a beautiful story. God provided an unusual way, and He made history. The nativity scene is one of the most beautiful scene, and but then when you go through the entire process, I think we got to give credit for whoever allowed them to use their barn, and we don't have a name. We don't know who it is, but it had to be somebody with compassion. So thank God for that innkeeper or that guest room, that relative. So here's what I believe that innkeeper said: I will find a place in my home for you, Jesus. Amen. All right, Luke chapter 2, verse 15 to 20. When the angels went away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, let us go over to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has made known to us. And they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger. Manger is that one feeding trough there. Um, and when they saw it, they made known the saying that had been told them concerning this child, and all who heard it wondered, amazement, right, at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured up these things, pondering them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen as it had been told them. I did not put the entire story over here, but let's get to that. So the shepherds, these are considered people that were one of the lowest of the low. Their occupation was a very low occupation. They got paid very little there. Usually reserved for like kids, as they're growing up, but it was a hard job. So Luke chapter 2, verse 15, the shepherds were excited to see Jesus. Isn't it interesting that here it is, Jesus is born, and the very first people that God wants to announce about Jesus' birth, the Messiah, as God sends a special invitation to the shepherds nearby. I find that fascinating. Um, who we view as lower class, and they have nothing in life, nothing's going for them, whatnot. There, um, I think God sees them very differently. So being a shepherd was a common occupation. Once again, lots of things. But isn't it interesting? So when you look at their occupation, here's what it says: they're responsible for leading and feeding and protecting and procuring rest for their flock. That is, when you look at that statement, that's what a pastor does in a church. They're leading, feeding, protecting, they're procuring rest for their church members. And now, when you look at the word shepherd, it's a very good word. It's something that all leaders, all pastors are striving to do. It's something that I want to constantly be reminding myself and our past that we got to be shepherds, leading, feeding, protecting, procuring. Wonderful word, isn't it? But they were viewed negatively and considered lower class in the Greco-Roman world. Aristotle, very famous individual, but he did not have a high view, a very low view actually of shepherd. He said, the laziest are shepherds who lead an idle life and get their subsistence without trouble from tame animals. Oh, not happy with them at all. You know, shepherds, lower class, whatnot. It doesn't mean that they're all going to be like this here, but you can see that maybe they were just not clean people, if that makes sense. And I want to apologize for this this illustration here, but then they probably were picking their nose and had no issue about that. They probably let out gas. They probably burped. And those kind of things here. But I do find them. Like I most likely they're probably individuals that did not fear people. And so many of us are afraid of people there. So I think we can learn from them. I'm not saying for us to be rude like that, you know. It doesn't mean that all shepherds were like that here. But I think when we see ourselves and we see that people don't really care too much for us, and they see us in a very low way, that we might be acting a certain kind of way. I'm going to say to you that God sees us very differently. So it was unusual for high rank to visit shepherds, but the highest rank in the entire universe, God, he invites them. I think that's significant. Starting with one angel announcing where Jesus was, and then a multitude of angels join, singing praises and inviting them to go. Think about just what happened. And one angel shining the light, and then boom, this entire group of tons of angels showing. It must have been a sight um, that that was amazing. So the shepherds saw Jesus. They told everyone what the angels said and did. Um, they returned glorifying and praising God. The town was buzzing. And think about what the people were saying and doing. They're like, what is going on? This child. So the focus is on Jesus. And and it should be like that, and they're going, who is this baby? Remember, now I believe they're in a relative's house. And then the more the more excitement, the more things that's happening here, probably more of the people are gathering around this house and going, what in the world is happening? So there's a big crowd that's forming, more and more and more. So baby Jesus is already drawing crowds. Think about that. But Mary, because she knows that Jesus is not just a baby. Jesus is the Messiah. She's thinking much deeper thought than this. And she's probably also thinking about the future and what would the Messiah do, and is there something bad that's going to be happening? And of course, we're going to find out that she does have, I believe, those kind of thoughts, because when these individuals were studying about the Messiah, there's some really strange prophecy about, once again, I think Isaiah chapter 53 or something like that is talking about the suffering Messiah there. So here's what I think what the shepherds were saying. It says, I can't believe God invited me to see Jesus. I cannot believe that. You know, when we come to Christ, I think that's how we are. I mean, it's just like, God, are you serious? I can't believe that you have chosen me. I'm a nobody here. But guys, um, none of us are nobodies. God, God takes nobodies and He changes them to somebodies. Isn't that wonderful? Amen. So Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 to 2. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born, get this, King of the Jews? They knew his title. They knew who he was. For we saw his star. So this star, it doesn't just belong to anybody. It's a Messiah star, right? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him. After listening to the king, and this is verse 9 to 12, they went on their way, and behold, the star, the king's star, the Messiah star that they had seen when it rose, went before them. So now it's moving until it came to rest over the place where the child was. This is baby Jesus. But he's not a baby anymore, by the way. It says child, not a baby, right? So he's probably about like 1.5, 2 years old here. So verse 10, when they saw the star. So stop. And it's interesting that they saw the star and they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy, because they knew that this is going to be their final stop. They finally found the Messiah. They finally found the King of the Jews, the real King of the Jews. And going into the house, You can kind of see this like really like if you were to see this played out in a movie, just kind of imagine with me. They're going into the house, and then as they're turning the corner, whatnot, they're seeing the child. They saw the child. You know, maybe Jesus is walking whatnot there, and then with Mary, his mother. How wonderful! And look at what it says. And they fell down. They worshipped him. It doesn't say they worshiped them. It doesn't say that they worshiped Mary. It says clearly it says they worshiped him, because although Mary is a wonderful person, they knew that, and they came for Jesus, and he's the one that's the Messiah. He's the one that's the King, not Mary. So it's important that we learn. That the Bible clearly shows us that there's no one else to worship except God. And once again, this shows us over here that they also recognize that he's not just a child, but he is Emmanuel, God with us. They knew that he was God. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. And over here, myrrh, right here, myrrh. And I think this is where Mary began to understand that um, that Jesus is going to be doing more. He's more than a king. He's more than a priest. He's more, and he's going to do something that's going to require him to use the myrrh. He's going to be suffering. That represents death here. So that means, and I'm sure she's thinking about all this and wondering what is going on. And remember I told you that Mary is a very young girl. For her to be thinking about this advanced theology of who the Messiah is, and Jesus being God and man, it's fascinating how much she understands, how much she knows. All right, so let's go to the wise men. So in Greek, magi, it's not musician. It means wise men. So that's what it means. And magi is a plural form. So Luke chapter 2, verse 2, the wise men's search for Jesus led them to Jerusalem. So they came from the east, Persia, by the star of the east, or star at its rising. They said this is his star, so this is the Messiah star. Very different. They knew this was very different than any star. So these guys were stargazers. Wise men. They were an ancient Gentile group, I believe, that were formed by Daniel to look for Jesus. About 500 years before the birth of Jesus, 500 years when Daniel was there, I believe that he formed this kind of group, and he showed them to get ready. Here it is. And Daniel, when you read his book, it actually tells about this kind of 70-week and whatnot there. So when you do the math, many scholars predicted that from that time on, that sometime in like 30 AD, it shows that Jesus is going to be coming in, and he's going to be, he's, it shows that the Passover, so it's the Passion Week, and he's coming on the donkeys, and people are was laying down their palm branches, whatnot. So it's a Passion Week, and it's amazing how Daniel was able to see that from God and be able to do that. So once again, what was Daniel known for? And I think many people there probably say he's known to pray 3 times a day, which is true. Amazing guy. Probably recognized for him with a story of him being thrown in the lion's den. But if you really ask yourself, what was he really known for? When you read the book, it's very clear. He was known for interpreting dreams and visions. So God was actually show them, and you see it in his life. So it's really interesting how Daniel was able to see all this. So imagine him being able to foresee the Messiah, Jesus, actually coming on the scene, and he's telling these wise men, and they're passing this knowledge from from generation to generation, and it's like basically saying, look at the star. You're going to see a star that's very different, and it's a Messiah star. So this star made two stops. A moving star? Hmm. Isn't that interesting? Um, so we're going to get to that here, but first, the first stop was Jerusalem. Wise men asked, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews?" Do you think that stirred up the entire place over there? Absolutely. And the king's not happy about that. And when the king is not happy, he does some really, really bad things. So the people in Jerusalem were afraid, you know, to say the least. Unfortunately, they were just looking at that, but they should have been asking the same question: where is this King of the Jews? What's going on? They should have been focusing on Jesus, but they're not. The wise men are, and the wise men are Gentiles. So isn't it interesting that it's the Gentiles that's looking for Jesus and not the Jewish people? Second, second that the star made a stop in the final stop to Bethlehem, and they saw Jesus, King Jesus, the child, and presented gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So they knew exactly what to give. So here's the meaning of the gifts. The gifts were appropriate for a king, the gold, a priest, for, what is it, frankincense, and the last one, myrrh, is a royal burial. All very valuable and whatnot there, but then it's very significant. They knew that he was a king priest. Where do we hear that from? Melchizedek was a king priest, so they knew that Jesus, this child, they knew that this Messiah was going to be like in the line of Melchizedek, there, a king priest. But they also knew from as possibly Daniel even knew about this here, that they knew that he was going to die a royal burial. I'm not sure if they knew about the resurrection. I'm not sure about that. So these gifts were prepared way in advance. Um, I think another key thing I want to mention here is that Joseph and Mary, they're not rich people. And they knew that God was going to provide everything for them, really, for for them having the Messiah. And look at what happened. They didn't know exactly what was going to be happening. They didn't know what kind of money was going to was going to be in their bank account, in a sense. But then here, gold is very valuable. We're not sure exactly how much gold it is. I know many stories shows this very small little, like, trinket, in a sense, and then they open it up and there's gold in there. It could have been a lot of gold, by the way. So you just never know. um, and that could have been enough to really take care of the entire family. I believe that God will take care of them there. Um, it doesn't mean that they became super rich. I think they were conserving all that here. But what I'm trying to say to you is that God took care of them. The star is not a planet. I don't believe it was a planet at all. So here's my interpretation of this star. There's many different interpretation of the star, but I believe that it was most likely an angel, as we see in Exodus chapter 14, verse 19. So, um, and the verse says this: Then the angel of God, who was going before the hosts of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. So this right here is, this is when God actually delivered the Israelites from Egypt. And imagine, like, they're going, and then right in front of them is the Red Sea. They can't go any further. So, and then now we have the Egyptian army coming over there. So this angel goes behind them to protect them, and then the cloud goes behind them. So it's very possible that I believe that this was an angel that actually that they were seeing that looked like a star. I'm not. Uh, I can't say I'm not. I can't say I'm 100% sure on that here, but that's just my personal opinion on that, and it seems to make more sense to me. So here's what I believe that the that the wise men said. The search for Jesus is finally over. We found Jesus. And by the way, we're not sure if the wise men is a plural form. We're not sure if there was three wise men. I think there is a because of the three gifts, they're probably saying there's three wise men, but we know it's plural. It could have been two. It could have been many. But we're not sure about that. So let's go next one right here. Matthew chapter 2, verse 3 to 4 and verse 13. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him, and assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. Verse 13. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. Um, Matthew and the Gospels and whatnot, there you'll see them referencing back and confirming that there's all of these were not an accident. It was a fulfillment of prophecy, and we're going to get there. So now let's talk about King Herod. This individual was a interesting person there, but Luke chapter 2 verse 2, King Herod was paranoid of losing his kingdom. This poor guy, I'm not sure how much sleep he got, and he probably was sleeping with a knife or or something. He was a crazy man, but he was recognized as Herod the Great. He was a Hindu, uh, um, he was an Idumean, so he was an Edomite. So um, when you hear that name, you should be recognizing that Esau, which is Jacob's brother in the Old Testament, uh, these two, their father was Isaac, right? So Esau, brother of Jacob, is the father of the Edomites. So they're not Jewish. Jewish came from the line of Jacob there. So this is a older group there, but then so he's not a Jew, but was appointed king of Judea in 37 BC, became an illegitimate king of the Jews, and the Jews knew about this. Probably one of the reasons why he was afraid of losing his kingdom. So, through his father's connection with top Roman officials, he was known as a master builder, but really he was more known as a paranoid tyrant. So he rebuilt this Jerusalem temple, considered his greatest achievement. It was amazing, you know. Probably one of the like just imagine going to this place and many people saying this is amazing, amazing. But because he was paranoid, he killed anyone, including family members, that got in the way of anyone that he felt was going to take away his kingdom. He would kill him, even his family members. So he found out that this child is the king of the Jews. So he is the legitimate king of the Jews. And we have these wise men come over here. They're announcing that he's freaking out, right? They're not coming back because God told them to go and not return back to Herod. So he is angry now. So he sent soldiers to kill boys 2 years and younger in Bethlehem. Matthew chapter 2, verse 16. So this was a directly fulfilled prophecy of Jeremiah 31:15. Very sad story. Many kids died. Many people are crying. God saved Jesus and his family and sent them to Egypt. Another fulfillment of prophecy of Hosea chapter 11, verse 1. So lots of different prophecies are happening right away. Herod knew people would not mourn for him when he died. So here's what he did. At the exact moment he died, he commanded soldiers to kill Jewish leaders, Jewish elders, and his son Antipater. So this is kind of what I believe he said. Herod, King Herod, who is this Jesus? Why is he king of the Jews? I will kill him. It's almost like he says, I don't care who he is. I'm gonna take him out. because he's paranoid. And maybe we're like that too, by the way. Like we're uh, we don't want Jesus to be interfering with our lives. But I'm going to tell you, we need to have a bigger understanding of life. Our life here on earth is so limited compared to eternity. Our eternity is so much bigger. What is eternity compared to 100 years? Eternity is much, much more than that. And plus, you can't take your riches with you. So think about all that. So, how will you respond to Jesus? Will you respond with pride and even arrogance that you are the king of your life and don't need Jesus? Will you respond by opening room in your life for Jesus because you need him? Will you respond with fear and anger at Jesus, thinking he will take away your kingdom that will not last? Will you respond with excitement that you are invited to see Jesus and receive salvation? I hope so. I pray so. Will you respond with joy that you finally found Jesus, the true gift, and give him the gift of your life? I pray you will. All right, so here is the challenge. Are you ready? Here it is. This challenge is for this week. Ask this question: who is Jesus in your life and why? Think very carefully about this. And I want you to understand why this is so important. Jesus should be the most important person in your life ever. I hope this was a very encouraging message. Thank you.